What a warm welcome to you, my Kisima family. This is yet another opportunity that God has granted us to connect heart to heart as we try to unpack matters of kingdom leadership. Today we have Reverend Jeanette Sibanda, who is not a stranger in our studios, or rather in our podcasts. And we are going to be talking kingdom leadership, focusing more on a topic, leading by seeking justice. I know it's rather a sensitive matter to other people when we talk issues of justice, because, Reverend, some people would rather, just let the sleeping dogs sleep and not want to start the fire. And others would say it's unnecessary, actually, to visit issues of injustice. But I don't know, what does that mean if there's someone who has plenty, yet the next person, their neighbor, has got nothing. And today we're really going to sort of focus on, I don't know how deep we're going to go in unpacking this issue of injustice, or rather seeking justice as leaders. But by God's grace, we're trusting Him that He's going to help us and lead us and give us wisdom. Right, let me welcome Reverend Jeanette Sibanda. Can you please greet our listeners?
Well, thank you for having me again. Greetings to all our listeners out there. Welcome to our conversation today.
Beautiful. Rev, just want to once again invite you to relax, breathe in and out. And I know you always have substantial info to share, but I always value your insight on various topics, and I value your wisdom in presenting, whatever you have in heart and mind. So I want to invite you today again, as we will be unpacking leading by seeking justice. And perhaps let's try to make everyone comfortable, especially there are Christians, unfortunately, who feel that the minute you talk justice, you're talking politics. What do you have to say to that?
Well, that's a very difficult thing when people say, "Oh, you're talking politics, and we don't want to be involved in politics." And sometimes people would say that as Christians we should just focus on spiritual matters and not focus on politics. And I want to shy away from a conversation like that. Not shy away, but rather to say, as Christians, what do we mean by politics? Because I think we need to make a big difference between partisanship and politics.
Okay.
So basically participating in political parties and saying, combining those two and making them one, like partisanship is basically political. But actually, when we think about politics, we're talking about the way in which the city is ordered. Right? So the parties, they are the ones who say, choose us, and will order the city or the country in the way that we think is right.
Sure.
And so that's what the political parties would do. But then all of us as members who live in the country or in the city are part of that city. And so we cannot shy away from how the city is being ordered. And so as a people of God, we actually need to be part of the conversation that says, how will the city be ordered? And so we don't want, I think we want to be careful. If you say, Christians should not be partisan because, political parties stand for different things and all of that, you can put an argument for that. And I'm not going to get involved with that today. But I just want to make sure that we understand that when we are saying we don't want to as Christians, we should not focus on politics, but we should rather focus on spiritual matters. We are actually leaving the city to be ordered anyhow.
All right. But
yeah.
what spaces or platforms do you think are suitable for Christians to engage in such conversations?
I think every platform is open.
Okay.
I think there is no place where I think Christians should not be part of conversations. I think we need to be part of those conversations. So what we then do is sometimes as Christians, we want to say, oh, we're going to do this thing on the side that is just a Christian thing alone. But I don't know if we live in a Christian country alone.
I hear you.
Does it make sense? So we live in the world that we are finding ourselves living together with other people and not just Christians.
True.
And so for us to say we do not want to be engaged in politics, then we are basically saying that we don't care about how the city is ordered. We don't care about how the world or the nation we live in is ordered. As a result, then we just fold our hands. But that does not give us the platform by doing that, we're actually taking away the right for us to speak and complain about anything. Because if we want to have a place where we can say, we can speak and be heard, how would people listen to us or hear us if we never present except the days that we've done something wrong?
Of course.
Right? So we want to say, so the conversation even around this public about the politics is not so much about the like getting involved, like going voting and doing all of that stuff. It's actually about saying, how do we become the church in the world we live in, and how does the church then have an influence in the world we live in? And so we can't expect to have a church that is not visible and only visible the day that politicians do something wrong.
True.
And then we show up and be like, that is not godly. But it's like, where have you been?
Yeah.
And I think that's the conversation. So to say to us, so the conversation around politics is not so much about the parties as much as it is the question of how is the city being ordered, and how do we then become part of the conversation around how the city is being ordered.
Wow. Okay. So I shall not be crucified for what I'm going to say.
Okay.
But I'm wondering if we are ready to engage in such conversations if we fail to actually look at how the church is how things are done within the body of Christ. Are we ready to even comment on how the city is run if we cannot talk openly about the situation inside the church? But anyway, we're not there. we talking kingdom leadership and focusing on a topic, leading by seeking justice. Rev, talk to us. We know, almost everyone knows the situation in our country, in our continent, and globally. But I really want us to focus on Africa and talking kingdom leadership in Africa and focusing on leading by seeking justice. Talk to us.
Yeah, no, this is a topic in a way that's very close to my heart in so many ways. It's close to my heart because of the way in which Africa is so wealthy in terms of resources and minerals. This is the richest continent that we find ourselves in.
Sure.
And yet we experience the extremest and the most poverty in the world.
Sure.
Like, how is it? So those two things for me do not make any sense. And so I was trying to figure out why, in my many years of ministry, why we were experiencing so much poverty, and yet when we read and when we are told, we find out that we have the richest minerals. Like almost all the other worlds almost depend on minerals found on this continent, and yet we get the worst part of it.
True.
And we don't get the benefits from it.
True.
And so as a result of that...
And also, Reverend, you notice that it's not only... We are not only wealthy in terms of minerals, but even in terms of the area, the land area, because we are the second largest continent in the world. I think the first one is Asia and then Africa.
Yep.
Sure.
And so for us to find ourselves in a place where we like that and we're saying, okay, that doesn't make any sense. One. Secondly, Christianity, I think we are now holding the largest Christian people in the world. I think it's us, and we're like second.
Yeah.
I can't remember who else is that. Who has the most Christians in the world?
Sure.
Like, how do we have the most Christians and have the most poor and then have the most rich continent?
Yeah.
Like, those things do not kind of combine. And wrestling through that myself as a minister, as a person who loves Jesus so much, and wondering how do we see kingdom in a place like this? And so that sort of drove me into a space of wanting to seek what does Jesus have to do with all of this?
Yeah.
What does he have to say with all of this?
Sure.
And so then that made me try to seek answers. I mean, I don't have all the answers. I'm still a seeker. But then I started realizing that as a Christian people, people of faith, somehow we shy away from justice. And for the very much reasons that you were saying, the justice conversation, for the very same reasons that you were saying, people saying it's politics. We don't want to be involved with politics. We have to, focus on spiritual life. But this, in a way, is actually contradictory from how the scriptures understood the people of God.
Okay.
And so now, first of all, I had to sort of even figure, so what do we mean by poverty? Because when we think of poverty, we usually often see the outworkings or the symptoms of poverty, where people are just struggling to make ends meet. And then also we get to the place where we define poverty monetarily. So we have so this income basically says that you're a poor person.
Sure.
But in searching or in looking for justice and trying to figure out, then we come to a place of like, we work very hard.
Okay.
And yet we're not able to make it.
Yes.
So how is it possible that we can work so hard? And so those two things did not combine for me. And so what I came to realize, and even in reading and in studying and in going through other, authors and classes actually literally around the justice issue, got to realize that actually poverty has very little to do with goods, but has everything to do with power.
All right. So poverty has got very little to do with
goods, like with things.
With goods, yes, I hear you. It's got all to do with power.
It has to do with power.
Sure. Okay.
How much power do you have to will things? How much power do you have to make things happen? And so realizing that when people have no capability of being able to change their situation, it doesn't matter how hard they work, but they're not able to change the situation. Right. Realizing also that there are even more powers at be that really control how the city is ordered. So we talk about the city being ordered, powers who order that. And so these powers they basically almost in a way always produce poverty. It's almost like they create a system and structures that then produces the poor. And so
I hear you.
Struggling to say, okay, now if poverty then is about the power and people lacking power to change their surroundings, to change anything about their lives.
Sure.
And then who's ordering the city? Who are the powers who order the city? Okay. And then what is there for the call of us as the church? And therefore, then the leaders, in a sense, who are leading the people of God. So that's basically, way it's like, all right.
But
when you look at this now, you cannot just think about poverty as, okay, let me go give people something. It's bigger.
Okay, I was going to ask, can we look at contributing factors to poverty?
Well, I won't say contributing factors because I don't know what the contributing factors. There's a lot. It's very complex. I don't want to say I don't know, but it's rather a complex matter.
Sure.
But let's look at so the systems that I'm talking about that are actually producing the poor. And so Lincoln, one of the books about empowering the poor, says this, and I want to quote him because I think this makes a lot more sense in quoting what he said, is that in our exploration on empowering the poor, we must begin by understanding how power is exercised in the city and how it produces the poor.
My goodness.
And so who exercises this power? Then he says that the systems that order the life of a city or a country are economic, political, and religious. So there are three main powers.
Okay.
All the other systems or institutions, they are basically subsystems.
All right.
Right? So your healthcare, your schooling, your education, all of this, they're subsystems that are ordered under these three main powers. So what are the economic powers and the systems that are in place for economics? What are the political systems and what are the religious powers? Because the religious powers will often reinforce what the economic and the political systems say.
Sure.
And that, for me, was a key thing, saying if we are Christians and we hold a power that can order the system, what are we then doing in engaging those powers in the city? And so that's where the question of justice comes in, because it's no longer just about, we have poor people and we got to be showing compassion.
Sure.
But it's about religious powers. They order the city in some form or the other. And if we hold back, in some way, we are saying that whatever religious powers are in play right now, they can continue. But what would it look like if we then became part of that, and if we have some form of power and leverage in the city? What would it look like if the kingdom had to come?
Sure.
What would that look like? And for me, that was a key thing. And so that's why it's so close to my heart, because when we look at this continent, we start to ask hard questions. Why are we continually so poor?
Yes.
When we have such rich resources on our continent, when we have so many Christians, right? Like, what's going on here? And Professor Dinyiko Maluleke, I'm not sure whether our listeners would be familiar with him. He is he's a theologian here at the University of Pretoria, I think, at the moment. But he wrote an article one time that I thought, oh my goodness, it hit me in my gut, because he asked a question. He so basically looked at the story of Job in the Bible, and he asked a question: could our religiosity in Africa be the reason why we are so poor?
Sure.
It hit me so hard, because I was like, what are you saying? What are you saying? And so realizing again that there is a part where our religiosity, our faith can be complicit in the oppression, and therefore we cannot hold back as the people of faith and say, okay, we don't want to be involved as politics, we need to focus on spiritual life, because our silence makes it possible.
But that's a tricky one, hey? Because once again, it's going to take us back to issues of doctrine. And now I will argue that, whichever way you interpret scripture is subjective.
Yes, agreed.
So it's a tricky one.
It's a tricky one, and so here's I think this other lady, she's an incredible preacher. She does some Bible studies, and one of the things that she said that struck me, I can't remember her full name now. Taylor, no, I cannot remember her full name now, but she said something like, there are two responses we have when we read the Bible. And usually we're either going to be revolutionaries or we're going to be complacent and reinforcing the status quo.
Wow.
Yeah.
Sure.
And so she said that, and I mean, that was a very brave statement. I felt that that was too brave. That is brave to say that. But basically, we're either going to stay with the status quo, the way things are, they're good because we see them as good, or we're going to be revolutionary. We're not going to accept the status quo. So those are the two responses that people will have in studying the Bible. So when you're saying it's subjective, I'm like, yeah, I agree. I can read the Bible through the lens of justice and be like, the Bible is for justice. And somebody else can read the Bible, the same Bible, and saying, but no, the Bible is only for spiritual.
Sure.
Spiritual, when you talk about liberation, you're talking about only spiritual liberation and going to heaven. And somebody can be reading it again and saying, but there's so much in the Bible for justice. And I do that. I look at it. I look at the Bible and I'm like, if I believe in the gospel of Jesus, it becomes impossible for me not to engage with the justice conversation.
Yes, absolutely.
And so looking at Jesus and saying, and having to remind us again that often in our postmodern or modern world, we have separated our lives into, different fragments and portions, where the spirituality is not the physicality, where we understand the sacred and the non-sacred. So there's dual understanding of the world. And that is how we read the Bible. So we read the Bible with separating the world. And yet, in Jesus' time and pre-Jesus' time in the Old Testament, that wasn't the case. Your life, public and private, your spiritual and home life were all intertwined, right? And so that lens that we come with, where we coming from a world where we understand emotionally this or physically this or socially this, and in the Bible it's not the same. So when Jesus confronts the powers in the New Testament, those powers are not separate. The people who rule the city and the people who rule the temple are the same people.
The same people.
So the powers so his core is not separated. So he confronts both religious and public leaders at the same time because they are one and the same. They're intertwined. And so it's the lens that actually inhibits us from being able to see the justice conversation, and that's why it becomes a sore point for other people. But what we have done, and what I want to highlight again, is because of this whole notion that we don't want to be involved in politics and stuff.
Yes,
we end up outsourcing even our compassion.
Oh my goodness.
So outsourcing compassion basically meaning that we don't see community transformation and city transformation as a discipleship issue.
Okay.
So we see it as the job of the government. We see it as the job of the NGOs. And we will happily donate and we will happily come alongside and, NGOs or parastate church things but it's not longer a discipleship issue. And by discipleship, I mean like where it is a responsibility of every person who follows Jesus to live that way.
To live that way.
To live that way. So now we outsource it. We outsource compassion. We outsource goodness. We outsource what is our responsibility, and we give it to somebody else, and we'll pay them to do it, rather than actually saying it is my responsibility. If there is an unjust situation in my community, in my place, I have to say something, because if Jesus was here, he would have said something. And am I not Jesus' ambassador? Am I not Christ's follower? So when we disciple people understanding these things, right? So justice no longer becomes a sore topic because it's out there, it's politics. But no, justice is an integral part of who we are as Christians. We are merely just following what Jesus did and what he said. And he calls us to when we do that. So stopping, because I think for me that's the biggest thing. It's like, how do we stop churches from outsourcing compassion, outsourcing justice, outsourcing what is right to do to other people, to other organizations, to other groups, and just be okay with donating. No, it's not okay to just donate. And so maybe people would say, oh, but are you saying that now we must all be be involved in politics or be politicians? No, I'm not saying that. What I'm saying is when you begin to live, with the words that Micah said in Micah 6 verse 8, when he says, seek justice, right?
Okay.
So when we start to do that, walking humbly before God, it's like, what God requires of you.
Yeah.
Right? This is what he says.
Yeah.
That's what he says. That's not even a hidden text.
Sure.
Right? When Micah is challenging. So it's like when we begin to make justice a discipleship issue, then we can say that.
Sure.
People can know this is what God requires of me. So when we're talking about obedience to God, so it's no longer just, because I think I'm not even sure what we mean when we say obedience to God sometimes. And so it becomes very entangled. But when we get to understand that being a Christian, part of being a Christian, or the inward being of a Christian, is being uncomfortable with status quo that continues to produce the poor. It's being uncomfortable when things are not right.
Yes.
It's being uncomfortable when we see the image of God being trampled upon just because of money.
Yeah.
Because of power, because of other. It's like, no, I am a follower of Jesus, and this is not right, and I need to stand up for justice. I need to stand up for what is right. And so, if we can do that, then we can understand that, okay, we can challenge the system.
Yeah,
we can challenge the system. We can go towards it. We can start working towards it. I mean, sometimes people think, "Oh, are you saying we must go fighting now?" I'm like, no. That's what I'm saying. You start to live in the way kingdom will ask us to live.
Yes.
So we live a kingdom way.
Where you are, in the space where you are.
In the space where you are, you live kingdom way. So you begin to lead a life of a radical, ordinary person.
And you find that, at times you don't even need to fight against the system. But if you do what is right at the time, if you challenge, like you're saying, stand up for justice, seek justice where you are. My point is that dealing with a system at policy level at times is a futile exercise. Yet if you make a difference, if you stand up for justice in the space where you are, and you find that the next person gets to see the right way of living, and really it adds value in a person's, in an individual's life, such that they begin to realize that no, this system does not talk to me. I cannot find myself in this. I cannot grow. I cannot move within this system because somebody highlighted, made them aware, sensitized them to the right way of living. When you stand up for justice.
Yes, and I want to say that when I'm talking about being able to make this a discipleship issue, when you have people doing the right thing, you are able to, you live against the system.
Yes.
All the time.
All
right?
the time,
so,
absolutely.
So absolutely. So when you talk about discipling everybody to know, whenever you see an unjust act being done, you need to stand up against it, or you need to live your life in a way that is against the system all the time. Like, make decisions that the status quo or the empire will not expect you to do, right? Make things in a way that actually will look like, when people look at you, like, we don't understand how you do that because nobody does that. That's kingdom. That, where people are like, how are you able to just be so generous?
Yeah.
Like, why are you being so generous? How is it even possible? Because everybody in the system says hoard. Make as much money as you can yourself, right? For yourself, for the unforeseen future. But then in the kingdom, it's like, we learn something like about there is enough for today and there'll be enough for tomorrow, right? And then you begin to live against a system that says hoard, and live generous. And so making small decisions that say, I will live against the system, where the system says it's not possible to do certain things, because if you do that, that puts you in jeopardy. You're not going to make it. You're not going to go up the ladder. You're not going to grow in the system. It's like, no, God is not calling us to grow in the system. God is calling us to look like the kingdom. And what would that look like? And I want to say again, also on the issue of, engaging on policy level sometimes looks like a futile action. And I want to say, because we're not organized, because Christians don't take this seriously, we find it very difficult to engage with the policies or with the, at the larger level.
Sure.
And also because of the way we are not tolerant of other people. So it makes it even harder for us to engage with people, because we cannot see them equally in the image of God the way that we are. So in the way that we have been living Christian lives, we have in a way reinforced the status quo of those who are higher and those who are less than, and those who are. So we've reinforced the systems in so many ways that it becomes very hard for us to say, actually, we can engage with the powers that be on the city level to be able to, go for policies or ways that actually are going to support our growth.
Sure.
So if you look at the continent of Africa, how is it possible that all the wealth can be extracted from our nation, our country, without us saying anything or doing anything?
Yeah.
Right? There are powers that be that make sure these things kind of keep happening. And sometimes we use the systems to actually help us do that. And that's what, Professor Tinyokomalek was asking those hard questions. And I want to say to us, if we look at Jesus and we listen to how Jesus was teaching and saying stuff, we will say, okay, now this is not enough. This is not good.
Yeah.
This is not the dream that God has for Africa. It's not the dream that God has for Africa. And what is the dream that God has for Africa? I think one of the difficult things around the conversations around justice is how much we are willing to pay.
How much are we willing to pay?
Yeah, because it's costly. It's costly to really indeed follow the footsteps of Jesus, because you're going to upset the powers.
Yeah.
And when you upset the powers,
my goodness,
there's a chance you are going to be the one crucified like Jesus was.
Yeah.
Because powers don't like to be upset.
Yeah.
So to actually to realize for us that if we're going to have those conversations as Christians, we have to be willing. The discipleship that we're talking about today around justice is a discipleship that's costly. And so we have to calculate our cost. Like, are we willing to carry the cross? Because that's where this whole conversation would lead us if we were to take it seriously. And so that's, for me, it's an important conversation to have, because, again, in the Bible, the justice theme is so big. And yet it's the one conversation that we don't talk a lot about. Because if you look at the justice, it's almost like you can open, all the prophets speak about justice. You cannot find any prophet who's not necessarily touching on justice in some form or the other.
Awesome. If you were to wrap up today's conversation, just few points that you can highlight on leading by seeking justice, what would you highlight?
I want to highlight that if the church does not deal with the systems, the structures of evil in the city, it will be very difficult for us to want to have a say in the city. It will be very difficult for us to see the transformation that we so desperately seek. And I believe that the revival that we're so longing for, it will come. And it will happen when we start to follow Jesus in the justice conversations.
Wow. Wow.
And I know that's very hard for a lot of people to
is.
hear that, because it's like, oh, hang on a second. We're talking about the Holy Spirit coming. But for some reason, I feel like it's because when you look at the Acts story, when people were equal, sharing, selling, that the Holy Spirit fell upon them. And so I sort of have that little bit of biasness maybe to a lot of people to say, I believe that the Holy Spirit came down because they were of one heart. There wasn't one who was above the other. There wasn't one who had more than the other. And that's why we see people selling their land, right? In the book of Acts. That happened when the Holy Spirit, and I believe that we're longing for a revival now, and I believe that revival is on the doorstep. And so let's follow Jesus in seeking justice.
Thank you so much, Reverend. Wow. Sure. This is KisimaRadio. Let us connect again next week on Friday as we unpack leadership by seeking justice under the theme Kingdom Leadership. Thank you so much to you listeners. We really appreciate your support. We appreciate your loyalty. And we love you. We love you. Remain a blessing until we meet again next week on Friday.
Thank you.
Thank you, Reverend.
Thank you so much. Appreciate it.